Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Oh, my goodness. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Let me see how many folks we got in the house. Hold up 1 minute. Make sure you guys are hitting the like button. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you guys got your coffee. It's a little too early to drink, in my opinion. No judgment. But I wanted to welcome a very special guest. Some of you guys, there's some hints in the thumbnail. Can y'all just, drop it in the chat who you think it could possibly be? Let me know. What are you guys thinking? Shout out to everybody. Good morning. Shout out to everybody from North Carolina. Oh, you're about to drink your second drink of coffee. Well, let me ask my guest what he's drinking this morning.
I'm drinking,
Hi.
hey, I'm drinking coffee, Nespresso.
Okay. Well, because people are over here drinking Kahlua in the morning. So I'm
Oh,
like,
okay.
shout out to
Well,
them.
maybe I
No
should have.
judgment.
Maybe I should have had a Kahlua or two this morning.
No judgment. No
All right.
judgment.
All right.
How are you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's a happy Wednesday here in the Pacific
Happy
Northwest.
Valentine's
Okay.
Day.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
All right.
forgot about that.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all. Some of us, we forget. Whatever. It is what it
Yeah.
is. Shout out to everybody. You're getting a lot of love in the chat, by the way.
Oh, thank
A
you.
lot of love. Yes. So, first of all, Jamie, I want to thank you so much for being here. Shout out to you. Jamie, I have a lot of his information in the description box, which we're going to kind of go through. But if you guys make sure you follow on IG, if there's shoot him an email, shoot him a message, say, hey, what's going on, Jamie? Loves the engagement and, of course, loves to interact with everybody. Jamie, why are we here today? What has brought us here today? Like, what do you have to say? What's going on?
Well, I mean, it really is a kind of recent part of my personal saga as a human being. You know, I did an interview a few months ago with Aaron Smith Levin. I had no idea that there was any sort of drama going on. He was at the Aftermath Foundation. I thought it was a united thing. I thought everybody was happy. And I had been talking to Aaron and giving information about him. And he had, why I'm here is because what happened to me as a child. That's really why I'm here. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I spoke about that for the first time a few months ago. And what's relevant about that is I had promised myself that I was never going to speak about it, that I was going to die with it up until a few months ago. And the reason that is because of what happened to me and the whole story. I had so much shame and so much humiliation from what I went through physically and in terms of abandonment and also just being connected to this thing that was weird and strange and odd that I'd kind of, for the last 20 years, really kind of shut the door on it almost, and I was never going to talk about it. Last April, I had a book come out that I wrote with a prominent scientist on a medical innovation that is a biological reset or retunement of the nervous system that creates a new understanding of post-traumatic stress injury as post-traumatic stress disorder as post-traumatic stress injury. It's a biological injury. We can see it on a brain scan, and we can now reset someone to the pre-trauma state. And I will go later in this, we can get into how that works. But this book came out, it's done well, but it hasn't done as well as I wanted it to do. I mean, it wasn't like sweeping the, and I got, Aaron offered me the ability to come on and bring this innovation to the people that I grew up with.
Yeah.
I learned about this when I was in detail when I was asked to speak at Fort Bragg to Special Forces. And that's where I learned about this thing. And that's when I made the connection at a post-traumatic stress meeting at Fort Bragg to the Mexican neighborhoods where I grew up and to the kids that have grown up in this machine. And I wanted this innovation for them. And at some point, this innovation for people, those people, became more important to me than my shame. So what I would like to do is maybe share a little bit about, what happened to me that I feel obligated to stand with MIRRIAM, who, after I did that interview a month or two later, reached out to me for my help and asked me to support her. Right.
Absolutely.
So I feel very obligated to do that. Why do I feel obligated to do that? I feel obligated to do that because at birth, I was taken from my parents at the UCLA Medical Center and taken to what I'll call a baby factory in downtown Los Angeles, run by the Church of Scientology, okay, where I was, 30 to 40 babies to one nanny, lying for the first 2 years of my life, no human touch, lying in my own poop, crusted, the lying in my own sick. When one woman who was one of my caretakers there reached out to me after I did it, I kind of did my first video and said, "Did you remember how they used to bathe you?" And I said, "No." And she said, they would line the babies up 10, 20 at a time, 30 at a time. And they would have one bath, and they would dip us in, take our diapers off, discard the diapers, dip us in the bath, grab the next baby, dip us in the bath. They never changed the water. Okay. This was in downtown LA. And then I spent the next 12 years of my life, the bulk of which growing up alone, relatively alone, rarely seeing my parents, going years at a time without seeing my mother, in what I would call a Scientology orphanage that was absolutely brutal. From the Asho Day House, which is where I was a baby at 2 or 3, we moved to this building on Melrose, which is where the worst things happen. I know, and I didn't have underwear. I never learned to brush my teeth. I was never in school except for a brief reprieve in Oregon where I got straight Fs for a few years. And then I spent maybe 2 months at Lockwood Elementary School. I never learned to brush my teeth. I wasn't made to shower. The dorms that we slept in, I was on the 3rd bunk at 3 years old, fell out of it constantly, in this militaristic environment, onto a floor. It's just hard to describe the loneliness and the isolation and then just the inner city poverty of that situation. Okay. I was semi-literate until I was 19 years old. And then in a flash of very, very fortunate and lucky opportunity, a relative gave me a way to work on my education. And it was the first time in my life I didn't have a monkey on my back. And I managed in 3 years I still had holes in my game, but within 3 years, starting out doing remedial classes, English and math at community college, I was able to, 3 years later, I was on my way to the London School of Economics, which in England or Europe is the equivalent of Harvard.
Oh my God.
And I don't say that to say anything aggrandizing about myself. I say that because if you look at the work that I do and the things that I've done, people assume that I just had this great life. No, the first, 19 years of my life were a slow torture of ignorance and pain. And so when MIRRIAM, and I'm not giving the half of it, okay? When MIRRIAM came to me, I'll say this before and then we can talk about maybe getting into my work. When MIRRIAM came, when I look at what happened to me, okay?
Jamie, your sound is going in and out.
It is.
Yeah, you sound very echoey.
Well, that's odd. Let me bring the microphone closer. Is that any better?
How are you guys listening to the sound? Can you hear me? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. It sounds very echoey. I'm wondering if you could unplug and then plug your headphones again, if that'll work.
The mic or the headphones?
You can hear? Okay. People said that they could hear. Go ahead. Okay. People are saying, okay, the sound sounds good. Can you hear? I can't hear you anymore. Give me 1 sec.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it sounds off now. It
Can you
just
hear
sounds a
me?
little off.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so it's decent.
You sound great now.
Okay, great. I unplugged my mic and plugged it back in. So, when it comes to these things, why I talk about what I've overcome, and is because people see me now and they see this person that looks somewhat normal and has accomplished things to them, but I'm not normal. I'm scarred and I've been beat up by this thing, and my family has been ripped apart by this thing. I have a homeless brother. Formerly homeless brother, he might call himself, but still almost homeless brother who was homeless for 7 years in Washington Square Park in New York. I'm estranged from my mother who's still in this thing. I'm estranged from my brother who's still in this thing. And my other brother has been, really, really hurt by this thing. Okay. When I look at what happened to me, I think to myself, why did this happen? How did this happen? And in my view, a lot of really good people didn't want to get involved. So they just turned and looked away from this little brown kid that was dying. I had probably 4 near-death experiences, 2 medical, 1 involving a fire. In that were part of these structures, a kind of chronic head lice that cannot be even imagined, like having an ecosystem in your head. Okay. And then, there were the public spankings. All right. I mean, the amount of physical and psychological abuse. And then, the worst part of it, worse than the psychological abuse and the physical abuse, was the fact that we were told from birth, I'm in this thing from birth. Okay. I'm a little, is that if we're angry or upset, we're dramatizing, or we're told from 3 years old, if we're crying, to quote, knock off the HENR, which means human emotion and reaction. We're told to knock off the bank, which means your reactionary mind, your subconscious mind, your active mind. Like, if you're upset, it can never be because something happened to you, even at 2 or 3 or 4. It's because of something you did, and it's because of something in the past, right? Imagine a baby a toddler being allowed to experience emotion. Imagine being 3 years old and being told that you are a trillion-year-old being in a baby body and should be treated like an adult. This is what I endured, and good people did nothing because they didn't want to get involved. I don't believe that I'm in a position for Miriam Francis to reach out to me from Australia and ask me for help. I can't turn my back on that if I want to. That's why I'm here. And as far as, before I, get into my work, I would like to say, one thing about, I talked about on this journey, like, how did I get here? Well, one way I got here, and 2 people I need to thank in a very profound way, and people are going to find this funny, but I mean it, are Mike Rinder and Leah Remini. In certain ways, you could say saved my life. Okay. And you could say that Mike did it twice. Okay. So back in 2009, I was under the radar. I was still trying to kind of hold on to my friends, have some relationship with family, my stepfather, have maybe a potential relationship with my younger brother. And I was going to just coast like that because I was never going to be associated with this Love Boat sci-fi thing. It was just so creepy to me. I felt like if anyone knew, they would judge me and think that I was strange and less. And I already felt strange and had to overcome being less because what I've been through. They took my childhood. I didn't want to spend my adulthood talking about it. So I didn't hang out with people I had very few friends that had ever been involved in it. I really just moved on. At least I did really in 2009. Well, what happened in 2009? Well, what happened in 2009 is the Tampa Bay Times article came out. And Mike Rinder and Marty Rathburn exposed what was happening at the international base. And someone close to me got me to read that and then asked me a question. Do you think it's true? Would any reasonable person say that's not true? And we all knew who these guys were because we grew up watching them at events. And I said, no, it's true. And then he said, okay, if it's true, what do you have to do? And then I said, well, okay, I now got to call my friends and publicly declare that I'm no longer a part of this thing. I can't just kind of sit underneath the radar anymore. So I called the people that I knew, and in a day, 90%, I mean, I have a big world because of what I do for a living. But in one day, 90% of the people I knew never, disconnected from me and were never going to talk to me again. At least the people I was close to. Okay. That decision to not this movement, they say their goals are to no criminality, no insanity, and no war is their goal. And what that article did for me in 2009, the Tampa Bay Times, and I have to thank Joe Childs and Tom Tobin, that article should have won the Pulitzer Prize. What it did for me, what Marty and Mike did for me, and, I probably connected with Mike more, because he was more at the events. Okay. Is I believed him, and it freed me to publicly declare that I was not part of this thing. And that was really the beginning of my healing. All right. So, you could say that if Mike doesn't have the guts to go out and say what's happening at the international headquarters, maybe I'm not in this position. Okay. Maybe I'm still living and writhing in that pain. Okay. Further, you flash forward to 2017. Is that when the Aftermath came out, or was it 2019? 2019.
16, 17.
Can someone in the chat tell us if it was 17 or 19? I think it started filming in the 17 and came out in 19, but maybe what? 17?
Yeah. 17th, I'm pretty sure, because when I was looking at Miriam's episode, that's around the time that it had aired.
Okay. So 2017, the Aftermath comes out, and now I was still never going to talk about it. I just declared publicly to my friends that I was living in the shame and humiliation and defilements of my body as a baby. Okay.
Yeah.
And, two of these suicides from that red brick building after the Asho Day House, those kids were my childhood friends. Right. The Aftermath came out, and Leah with Mike did an astonishing job at picking this thing apart over two seasons.
Yes.
Okay. And for what happened is the culture bit into this thing because they did an amazing job. And for the first time in my life, Leah and Mike demystified what this thing was. They made it less weird. They made it part of the zeitgeist. I mean, they stood on the shoulders of giants, from John Atack to Russell Miller to Janet Reitman to Lawrence Wright to Alex Gibney. Everything was built upon what had come before. But nothing had kind of broke it down and explained it into a way where anybody could easily understand it. I don't think Leah could have done that without Mike. I don't think Mike could have done that without Leah. If they don't do that, if they don't bring an understanding of what this thing is into the zeitgeist, into the public consciousness, there's no way I'm sitting here in front of you right now. So I know there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of infighting, a lot of negativity. And I just want to make sure that no matter what is going on now, those people, like Leah and Mike did that, and they, in a lot of ways, saved my life. Because if this thing, without the Aftermath Foundation, I die with it. Not the Aftermath Foundation, the TV show, the Aftermath TV show.
The TV show. And Jamie, I want to thank you because that's one thing. I'm so happy that what's the saying, giving flowers, right? To a certain degree, to highlighting some of the good things that the show has done. Because this, for me, I don't think anybody is trying to shit on the show to a certain degree. And by the way, it's 3 seasons, not 2.
Okay.
Yes. And so I think it's important to at least highlight, this was some of the good. However, there's still more work to be done, clearly.
Yeah.
Right?
And I will get into, I want to talk about my work. And then after
Yes.
I talk about where I work, I'll get into what I think, my view of what's going on right now. I'm not going to engage in ad hominem attacks and try to make one person look bad or look evil, because I don't believe that. Even if they do that to me, I know right now that there's been things going on, hushed tones from, sadly to say, I feel like I'm being fair gamed by the Aftermath Foundation. I'm not being, it's funny. Like when I came out, I thought I was going to be fair gamed by the church. I never thought I was going to be fair gamed by the Aftermath Foundation.
The people that have supposedly left.
Yeah. So I have things that I want to say about that, but I don't want to say about them in the context of purely in the context of Scientology. I want to talk about these things that's going on right now in the context of the human condition, in the context of relieving suffering and helping people. I am concerned with my past. I do want to help the people from my past. But if you read my book, I'm working with Rwandan genocide survivors. After the military, the largest cohort of people that get this treatment, this reset of the nervous system, is sexual assault victims. They're the largest cohort that were seeking this thing out. Now, it's gotten to be really mainstream. There's a private equity firm that's opening up clinics all over the world. That's why most of the clinics are in the United States and Australia. That's why MIRRIAM's able to go to Melbourne to get it.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. But after the military, the majority of people that are finding this treatment before, when these clinics have only been around for the last few years, the people that were finding it were the people that were the most desperate for relief. And outside of the military, in the civilian world, that has been victims of sexual assault. So that's another reason I'm here. Okay. So I'm more than giving flowers when I say, and I appreciate you calling it that. I just really want to say, when I say what Leah and Mike did for me, you said, why are we here? I would not be here if not for the Aftermath TV show. It was too strange. It was too weird. What would happen is I would go and tell a friend about it, or it would get found out in some community that I was in. And then I felt like I was turned into like a zoo animal.
Oh my God.
Right. Like people would be it was so weird and mysterious people. They would just ask me questions. I was exoticized. After the Aftermath, it wasn't like that anymore. People understood what it was after what Leah and Mike did. And then I felt like I could exist in the world without being the other, without being the strange. And I can't tell you, I'm a mixed kid, so being othered has been a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I can't tell you how profound it was for me as a human being for these guys to take this aspect of my otherness away. I mean, in a lot of ways, there's no way I ever go on errand if Leah and Mike don't do that. Right. So I just want to make sure that I want to just be I don't want to get into any specific attacks on anyone. I just want to kind of explain my point of view. I know that there was a blog post. I know that my name was mentioned. Okay. And one of the things that was mentioned is maybe, Jaime makes money off this. I will not make any money off of Miriam's treatment. I don't make money off of the maybe dozens of people that have gone for treatment that saw me on Aaron and saw me on Andrew that are sending me emails talking about, what the changes in their life. Okay. But maybe someday I will make money, and I would love to make money. Like, here's what I want to say this. My hope is that Leah and Mike would make millions of dollars for what they provided me. This idea that making money is somehow bad for people that do good is a straw man. It's ridiculous, right? Like, should firemen not be paid? Should cops not be paid? Well, we can't let that doctor operate on us. He's a millionaire. He's making millions, right? I broke my leg 10 years ago. I had a top orthopedic surgeon for the Oregon Ducks work on my leg. That guy's wealthy. Okay. I don't have any problem. In fact, I would love it if people that do, if what motivates someone to do good and make the world a better place is money. I want Mike, then I want anybody doing good can be a millionaire. So if I do end up making money on this in the future, I would be very proud of myself. Okay. And, when Leah, that was how the Scientology attacked Leah, that she's using her form of religion to make money. That's what they said about the Aftermath TV show. And Leah responded, I don't work for free. As far as I'm concerned, Leah and Mike can get rich, really rich, helping people. Mike's channel is monetized. Leah's channel is monetized. They got paid for the Aftermath. I want them getting paid. And the more money, the better. I wouldn't care if they made if they made billions bringing down this group, I would be a happy person. Okay. So I just want to say that for the record. And then if it's okay, Rabbit, I'd like to talk a little bit more about my work.
Please do. Please, let's
Okay.
start.
Okay. So in 2004, there's a shot that's been around since 1925. It was being treated used to treat people with tingling hands in 1925, called the stellate ganglion block. It is in 2003, 2004, one of the leading anesthesiologists in the country was using this 100-year-old, almost 80-year-old shot at that point to treat women that were going through. He was innovating the 80-year-old shot to treat women who were going through menopause. He thought tingling hands and hot flashes were connected, and he was moving this shot around. And I'll explain where it is and where it goes and how it works. And he was incredibly successful to the point where he was mocked in the beginning, like any medical innovation. And then when the research papers came out, he was hailed as a genius. I mean, the Norwegian government, brought him to Norway and had him teach their top health professionals. But when he was doing this research in 2003, some of these women that were going through menopause that he was treating and giving relief to using this shot were saying that their post-traumatic stress symptoms went away. So he started researching, and he published on it for the first time in 2006. Since 2006, it's been heavily adopted first and foremost by the US military, who adopts everything first. They desegregated first before the nation did, okay? They're probably at this point, if you collect it all over the world, they're probably doing 20 to 30,000 of these treatments a year. Obama endorsed this treatment as far back as 2008. And I know there's been some criticism that it's not, quote, FDA approved. Well, it is FDA approved for pain. And we're trying to widen the FDA approval specifically for post-traumatic stress injury. Okay? Because it's not a disorder, which I will explain. Okay. Like I said, which I will explain. So, as far as this like FDA approval, again, another straw man. Vitamins are not FDA approved. Makeup is not FDA approved. Google how much are the things that you use every day that are not FDA approved, and you'll laugh. Okay, so this idea, and it is FDA approved for pain, and post-traumatic stress injury is very painful. Okay, so we're looking to get that expanded. In 2012, one of the most famous psychiatrists in the world, a guy named Frank Ochberg, who does the Forward to the Invisible Machine, who was the guy that endorsed what I'll call he defined Stockholm syndrome for the FBI in the 1970s. He started lobbying to get the name changed from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic stress injury. Okay. And I think, and the APA hasn't done it yet, but they're moving towards it with the science, because that's what the science is revealing. And I think 38 states have changed the name from disorder to injury. This is mainstream science.
APA, for those that don't know, is the American Psychology Association.
Psychiatric.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And so in terms of people who've endorsed this, Obama endorsed this in 2008. Delta Force uses it. Navy SEALs uses it. Special Operations Forces uses it. Dakota Meyer talked about it on Rogan. He is the winner of the Medal of Honor. Okay. And thousands of sexual assault survivors have found that this is the only way that they've been able to get any sort of permanent relief. And I want to explain how it works. But this idea that it's someone on the fringe is ridiculous. It's been covered on 60 Minutes, CBS This Morning, Wired Magazine, okay? And I think if it's good enough for Special Operations Forces and Navy SEALs, it's good enough for a sexual assault victim, and it's good enough for anybody that grew up in a cult or anybody that's going to resonate with the trauma symptoms that I'm about to explain.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened is I got invited for my other book on art and business to speak at JFK Auditorium on the subject of communication. While I was there, I had found out about this treatment because after the aftermath, I started looking at myself and realizing that I needed to get some counseling. So the aftermath led for me going to get some counseling. In that counseling, I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
From when I did that, I started to be going, God, I don't want to have this stigma. I don't want to have this like scarlet letter of having post-traumatic stress from what I'd been through. I denied it too. You know, I talk about it in the book, The Therapist. I said, I don't have that. And I laughed at her and she looked at me like I, you know, kicked her dog or something. And that was like, that look that she gave me was what started me on this, really facing what had happened to me. And that I was a victim, because the worst thing you can be in Scientology is a victim. Okay. It's like you're less than a person if you're a victim. Okay. So I had to face that I was a victim. I had been victimized. I had been abused when I'd been indoctrinated my whole life not to ever say that I was those things or believe that I was those things. The Aftermath TV show did that for me. Leah Remini, Mike Rinder. Okay. So I got invited to write. I had another book that came out. One of the guys that reached out to me that was a fan of my other book is one of the top forensic psychiatrists in the world, a guy named John Faber, who's a close friend of mine now. He is the former director of behavioral health for all of Humana. Okay. And now he's a clinician near Los Angeles. I had him vet this thing for me in the middle of COVID. I went and got this treatment for myself. It's the most transformative thing I've ever done. The doctor invited me to dinner. We became friends. And then because I'm an author, I was able to secure a book deal. It's distributed by Penguin Random House. Okay. Okay. And that book is in every Barnes and Noble in America. Okay. Okay. So it's okay for Barnes and Noble. All right. Okay. Okay. So they're not worried about it. I know there's buzzes out there that the Aftermath Foundation or other people, again, I think there's a fair game campaign going on about me. So if you hear whispers about me, it's probably I hate to break, it sounds sad, but it's probably coming from the Aftermath Foundation. And if they had any concerns about the FDA approval or me making money, they have my phone number and my email. Give me a call. Okay. And how I originally got brought into this thing is right after I did that show, Aaron called me the next day and I didn't know him. And he said, hey, listen, I was just removed from the board of the Aftermath. He starts giving me the whole thing, tells me everything, tells me about Julie, you know, all the stuff that happened in LA, everything. And he said, and I said, well, why are you telling me this? And he's like, because they brought up your name as one of the reasons that I was removed, or one of the things that not that I was removed, that one of just the many sins that he had committed. And I was like, listen, Aaron, I just did. It took you 3 months to convince me to do that. I didn't sleep for 6 weeks because of the humiliation of doing this interview. And they're saying that it's bad. That's my childhood, is them telling me that everything I did from birth was bad, that something was wrong with me, that I had an ailment, and how I braved this to bring this. And it was really sleepless nights because I was never going to talk about it. And then within a day, somebody from the Aftermath Foundation calls Aaron because they got one single email saying that my work was fraudulent. Now, I opened up my Instagram. I got hundreds of emails from around the world, mostly from people never involved in Scientology. That seems to be the audience. Okay. And a lot of people went and got the treatment. Tons of people studied it. Okay. That broke my heart, that I would somehow be, you know, they got one, nobody emailed me saying it was bad or a fraud. Okay. The Aftermath Foundation got one email. Okay. I wonder who from. Could it have been OSA? So the fact that they invoked my name as a bad thing after I was still reverberating from, should I have done that? Like, I'm not kidding when I was saying, or I'm not exaggerating, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't want to do it. Okay. And then they invoke me as something bad. So that was the first way I got pulled into this, is they pulled me into it. Right. So, and when they got that letter, they had my phone number. Right. I'm reachable. I'm on Instagram. I have a contact. You could go onto the iconist.ltd and go into my contact page. I get emails all the time for people that don't know me that want to talk to me. Okay. But nope, they did that. Okay. So, I do this treatment. It changes my life. I become friends with the doctor that invented it. We go out to dinner. He explains all the science. I believe it. Not long after that, I get invited for my book, The Iconist, to go speak at Fort Bragg, which is the largest military institution in the world, to Special Operation Forces at JFK Auditorium. Okay.
Wow.
And one of the things that was, I think, going around about me is that someone accused me, I heard, I'm not sure who it was, of being a hustler. Okay. Like, I don't know. I mean, I was hired by the Department of Defense, Nike, Adidas, Intel, Symantec, Cisco. I've got a degree from the London School of Economics. I did a special seminar when I was at Fort Bragg to psychological operations to help them do better counter propaganda against the Russians and the Chinese. Okay. So I'll take that as a compliment. Do I hustle? Yes. I've had to hustle because of where I come from, because it broke me. Okay. But I think that books take years. Right. And I've done 2 of them, and I'm right. And I'm working on another one right now. And I just had a children's book come out on a major publisher in November called A Kid's Book About Resilience.
Yes.
Okay. So, for a hustler, I'm like, the one thing I never thought I would ever do with my life, Rabbit, was because I had no ability to do long-term things because I never had normal education. I mean, at 19, I could read at a high level because I was studying the doctrine from 9, but I had a kindergarten writing level and a kindergarten math level at 19. Okay. I was a mess. So I get invited to Fort Bragg. I go to Fort Bragg. The colonels that were invited me to Fort Bragg knew I was interested. I got interested in post-traumatic stress after I got this treatment for myself. Okay. And what was happening for me is that any time I got even the slightest negative news, I would feel overwhelming sensations in my body. Okay. Right. And I never thought of it was biological. When I saw that, it made total sense to me. So they said, hey, why don't you stay a few extra days and you can we'll take you and you can learn more about post-traumatic stress while you're at Fort Bragg. And then the doctor ended up coming with me, and they arranged for him to do what's called grand rounds, which is where they share all the innovations in the treatment with the top medical minds at WOMAC, which is the most advanced military hospital in the world. So the doctor ended up coming with me, which normally takes a year. These colonels arranged it in 6 weeks because of who they were. And the doctor did grand rounds at WOMAC. So this doctor, this controversial doctor, he's done grand rounds at WOMAC. He's done grand rounds at Walter Reed and testified before Congress. This is out there. Okay. So I'm there. I'm doing this post-traumatic stress meeting with the Health Initiative Task Force at Fort Bragg in this kind of therapy building. And I'm listening to the worst stories from Iraq and Afghanistan from Special Forces fighters that you could imagine. They were all being told when they came back that they had PTSD. And I was angry because I knew that this thing worked because I'd done it on myself and I'd looked at the publications. So I told them, you guys don't have that. Here's why it's so important, Rabbit. And then I'm going to get into the symptoms, and then I'll read my statement, and then you can ask me whatever you want. Why it's so important is that if it's a biological injury, and it is, and we're telling people that they're crazy. Like, what if somebody had a broken leg? Would you say that you have broken leg disorder? Would you tell them that they're crazy? When you tell somebody that has a physical injury, the book is called The Invisible Machine because it's a simple mousetrap of a mechanism and you can't see it. Okay. But you can see it on an fMRI. Okay. You can see it on a brain scan. Okay. If you're telling someone that has a physical injury that they're crazy, that stigma does a lot of damage. It's horrifying. So I want that stigma lifted. I want the stigma. I don't want people that have a biological injury told that they're mentally ill. That's really the issue here. Okay. So I'm at Fort Bragg. I'm listening to the worst stories you could imagine. The guy says, you want to speak at the end? I don't even get the idea that the guy that runs the task force likes me very much. I'm pissed off. It was 2 hours of the worst stories you could ever imagine of death and just of people killing people. And I get up and say, yeah, can I say whatever I want? He says, yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm angry that you guys are special forces, the best of the best. And you're coming back and being told we're crazy. Any of you can go to Chicago and feel relief. A month later, Sovereign Air, a private jet company, donated a plane to send my first 10 guys from Fort Bragg to Chicago. Okay. And now, then third group opened up. Anyone that wanted to go and get it from the inventor could go to Chicago. because they were doing it on when I went to Womack, they were still doing it from a 10-year-old paper. That's why he did grand rounds to fix that. Okay, so I'm angry. I give my piece. The guy that runs the task force says, for some reason, that shifts something in him. He sees that I'm an honest person. He says, hey, man, come on over and talk to me. And then he said, Jamie, have you, this guy named Jeff Dardia, who runs the Health Initiative Task Force, Special Operations Forces medic. And he says, do you know what operator syndrome is? I've said, never heard of that. He goes, this is what happens to a special forces fighter when they've never been to war. I got 2 more minutes of this, and then I'm going to give my statement. Okay. This is what happens to somebody that's never been to war. But they're in Afghanistan, in Iraq on their 3rd deployment. They've been away from their family through 3 years. They hear the bombs. There's IEDs around the corner. So they're carrying this chronic stress that's called allostatic load, which is what I carried as a child. They get this condition, even if they're never in a firefight, called operator syndrome. And he starts showing, and I start reading the symptoms of operator syndrome. This is what led to the book. And these are the symptoms of operator syndrome. It's everything that you would experience if you were in the jungle 2,000 years ago and a tiger jumped out at you. You would experience anxiety, hair trigger, reactivity, hypervigilance, hyperarousal, paranoia, sense of doom. In the military, where people trained to protect, the ultimate form of flight is suicide. In my neighborhoods where I grew up, where life was cheaper, in the inner city LA, the ultimate form of fight is homicide or physical aggression. So when I saw these symptoms of operator syndrome, I didn't see the military. I saw the Mexican neighborhoods where I grew up. I saw immigrants, and I saw the people that grew up under the circumstances that I grew up under into the dorms with these same circumstances. So I want to say one more thing, and I want to finish off with this. So if you're experiencing any of the circumstances, the symptoms I just named, anxiety, hair trigger, reactivity, hypervigilance, hyperarousal, mild paranoia, sense of doom, suicidal ideation, or aggressive behavior on any level, you could have this biological injury. And I want you to think of it this way. Peter Levine wrote this in the 80s, I think it was. He started talking about this concept of fight or flight is what would be a reaction to running from a tiger. Okay. This is a biological injury. And scientists have known this is a biological injury for a long, long time. In 1970, there was a book came out, and this is the last I'm going to say on it. Okay. But if you resonate with these symptoms, look into it. If you can't afford my book, get it from the library. I'm not trying, all right. Or send me a message and I'll talk to you. I'm going to give you a referral link so that people can get waived the intake fee if they want to go through the Stella Center, which has all the modern protocols.
Wow.
It's gone from 70% to 85 to 90% more effective in the permanent relief of most severe post-traumatic stress symptoms in the last 10 years with the modern refinements. So it's important that you get what's called DSR, which is dual sympathetic reset version of SGB, select ganglion block. All it is, okay, so I'm gonna basically talk about how we know it's biological. I'm gonna explain what the procedure is, and then maybe I can get into my statement. Okay. So in 1970, a book came out on Little Brown called Violence and the Struggle for Existence. It was written by Frank Ochberg and all these Stanford scientists, okay? That book came out 2 years after Martin Luther King died and was assassinated, and Coretta Scott King did the foreword to this book. Okay. In that book, there's a chapter called Biology and Aggression. And these scientists are saying in 1970, we 100% know that post-traumatic stress is biological. And here's how we know. If you take a dog, a cat, a horse, a zebra, an elephant, a rabbit, and you torture it and you beat the crap out of it for a month, then you put it into the Ritz-Carlton and you treat it like the Queen or the King of England for the rest of its life.
Yeah.
That animal, if you tortured it for the month, even if you treat it like a king or king for the rest of its life, will never be the same.
Exactly.
It will be one of two ways: incredibly aggressive, fight, or incredibly meek, flight. We didn't just give that dog, that zebra, that elephant, that rabbit a disorder.
Yeah.
We changed its biology. Now we know how. So what's happening is when you have a severe traumatic event, or like say you swerve, well, let's talk about a mild traumatic event. You swerve your car in the freeway. Your amygdala sends a signal to these ganglion necks in your nerve, in the select ganglion. Select ganglion goes from your amygdala to your toes. The sympathetic lives here in your neck. Normally you get elevated if you have like a traumatic experience, and then you come down to baseline a few days later. A few hours later. A human being's supposed to live in fight or flight for about 30 to 90 seconds before they run from the tiger, get eaten by the tiger, or kill the tiger. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not able to live like that for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So what happens is normally we come back down after a few hours. Well, if that traumatic event is too much, like as in a sexual assault, which is the primary civilian population that seeks this thing out, and then first responders, people that I do not want called kooks. Okay. If that's too much, like you see your friend's head blown off in front of you, a sexual assault, and you get too elevated, you get your biology changes and you get stuck in fight or flight. Your brain releases this stuff called nerve growth factor and norepinephrine. Norepinephrine you have more norepinephrine in the brain, which is connected to anxiety. But what more importantly is happening is that nerve growth factor causes excess nerve growth to sprout in your nervous system, in your neck. Okay. So now where you had 4 nerves that were responding to your amygdala, now you have 8 or 16. This is how we think it works. Okay. So now the signal reverses 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. You're now experiencing running from a tiger, but you're like eating, chocolate cake, watching Netflix, and you're running from a tiger.
Okay.
So all the doctor does with this 100-year-old shot, so we know it's safe, using an ultrasound, which is FDA approved for pain, is he takes he takes the same $2 amount. The pharmaceutical companies will probably never get behind it. He takes the same $2 amount of anesthesia that goes into an epidural called bupivacaine. And it's a local anesthetic like Novocaine. It wears right off. That's why it's used in an epidural. So there's no permanent deadening of the nerves. And he basically shuts off the nervous system. Adult trauma is on the right side, they're finding, and then everything before puberty is on the left side. So if you have childhood trauma, you need to do 2 days in a row.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, because you can only do 1 side per day. He does a dual injection at the C3 and C6 vertebra, and he basically shuts down the sympathetic nervous system. When it turns back on 10 minutes later, it goes back to the normal. The XF nerve growth goes away. So where you had 16 nerves constantly keeping you stuck in fight or flight, now you have 4. That's how that's the understanding of how it works. Okay. And you can see what you see on a brain scan is someone's had PTSD. They've had what happened to me. They had what happened to Miriam. They get this treatment and and then you could scan their brain in an fMRI and you would see increased activity in the amygdala. You do this treatment on them. And then, obviously, the brain fluctuates, but if you do this treatment on them a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, you see all that activity in the amygdala has calmed down. We didn't go near their brain. We didn't go near their brain. Okay. So there's lots of publications out there. You can follow me on Instagram. If you want peer-reviewed publications, I'll send them to you. You can also go. You can also go to, I'll send you whatever I can send you some of those to put in the chat, or I can also send you, if some people reach out to me, I also give you a referral link so that people can waive the intake fee if they want to go to Stella. Okay. Which you can put in the chat. Okay. But anybody
Jamie,
who wants to talk, yeah.
I can put that in the community tab for you guys to check it out. I mean, I'll put all this information in there, whatever Jamie wants to share. Now, you said it earlier, actually, the name of the treatment that people are saying, well, what is this treatment? What is it? Like, even if you asked your doctor, I don't think, how?
Yeah, listen, there's a private equity firm that's opening up clinics all over the world. There's at least 35 in the United States right now, mostly in the US and Australia. Okay. So the chances are you can get this close by to you. Okay.
What is the name of the treatment?
It's been known as the SGB, but it's been evolved from that. It's changed so much. We're now calling it DSR, dual sympathetic reset, stellate ganglion block. I don't like to call it a stellate ganglion block because when we think of a nerve blockade, we're typically thinking of like a deadening of the nerves to relieve pain.
Yes.
This is not that. This is a local anesthetic that turns the nerves off for 10 minutes. And then they reboot 10 minutes later at baseline. I have sent earthquake survivors, Rwandan genocide survivors, human trafficking survivors, sexual assault survivors, countless special forces operators. I worked with directly with the guy that not only a guy that survived Black Hawk Down, but he also was the guy that led the mission that captured Saddam Hussein. He's one of the first people that I sent. him and his wife.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So, you know, if you're like, stop wearing makeup if you're concerned about the FDA approval. Insurance companies are starting to cover this. Again, the mainstream media has covered this. Obama's endorsed it. It's, you know, and then find someone that's had it, or go on the Stella website and see the people that have had it and see what they say. See them, see the before and after. Like, I've now known hundreds of people before and after, and I know myself. Okay. This is the future. We know more about the brain in the last 10 years than we know in the previous 10,000. And this is the future. And it makes sense. Okay. So he turns off the nerves. They turn off 10 minutes later at baseline. You know, depending on your epigenetics, most people it lasts, you know, with a relative degree of permanence. But depending on your epigenetics, some people have to get it redone 6 months later, 5 years later, 10 years later. But compared to the stigma and compared to the pain, even if you had to go get it redone, this is nothing compared to what the cost of living in that state is, right? It's not, you know, it's okay. So that's pretty much my book, The Invisible Machine, The Startling Truth About Trauma and the Scientific Breakthrough That Can Transform Your Life. I have no problem showing the book, and I have no problem you buying the book, and I have no problem making money on this book and making people better. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. The same way I don't mind a surgeon making money, and I don't mind a firefighter making money, or any other first responder, an ambulance driver. There's somehow this idea, or a YouTuber. I hope that you become a millionaire doing your show. Okay. Okay. So let me read some things. Let me just read through this for 10 minutes, and then we can open it up.
Okay.
And if we have a lot of questions, Rabbit, hopefully you'll let us go long.
You're fine.
And again, anybody can reach out to, follow me on Insta, and anybody can reach out to me, and I will respond, and I'll give you all the links that you'll need will be in Rabbit's chat. But, like, you know, I got hundreds of email between Aaron and Andrew, and I have some people I have to get back to right now. There's 8 or 9 people that I haven't gotten back to because I had a client in town for 2 weeks. But I spent 3 weeks responding to every single person. Okay. Here's what I'm saying. I'm supporting Mary and Francis because of what was done to me and my own pain, and the fact that good people did nothing. I promised myself when I was a little kid that if I survive this, I will not do nothing. Okay. That I will take a stand when it's asked of me or required of me to take a stand. People could have stopped my abuse and just said they didn't want to get involved. I don't want to be I don't want to be melodramatic about it. I do not feel I'm in a position to say no to Mary and Francis, even if I wanted to. Okay. That's how I feel. I want to bring this to the people, to all people. Most of the audience listening right now is not former SCN people. Okay. I want to bring this to yoga instructors, kindergarten teachers, CEOs, plumbers, anyone that is that you can get this from not getting, affection as a child, from your father being mean to you or putting you down, from your parents being distant, from bullies, anything where you're carrying prolonged extreme stress. That's all acceptable for too long will trip your biology into having operator syndrome. Okay. Stephen Porges of the Kinsey Institute, who is one of the most renowned trauma doctors in the world, he's unimpeachable, wrote this: in The Invisible Machine, Lipov and Mustard rewrite the recovery narrative for many who have experienced personal disruptions and life compromises. Through personal stories, we learn that traumatic experiences may lock the nervous system into a chronic state of fight or flight, while compromising feelings of safety and sociality. The Lipov treatment gives permission to retune, enabling one to return to sociability, playfulness, and social connection. The most powerful thing that I got out of it is the ability to experience joy. Like my biology, I was struggling with it. So the other reason that I want okay, so I'm just going to roll through my points on this blog post. Why I'm here is I want to bring this away from Special Forces and Delta Force and Navy SEALs and bring this into the mainstream society. That's why I wrote the book. If you read the book, even if you don't get the treatment, I don't think too many people could read the book and not understand at the end of it that what's going on inside you most of the time is biological. Even if you never get the treatment, we've just taken the stigma away, and I've just changed your life. When we started writing the book, the publisher or the editor said to me, "What's your ultimate goal for this?" And I said, I don't care if people get the treatment. I want them to know that they're not crazy, that they have a physical injury to their body. That's my goal. Police. And then as far as, the thing that's going on between Miriam and Mike, and this somehow, again, if anything, I've been trying to protect Mike and get Miriam to hold back. Right. But, this police chief, this law enforcement officer recently told me, that the reason it's so important to find out the specifics of what was done to us as children, what was done to Miriam, what was done to me, is for us to have closure. We can't just know the how. We have to know the why and the who to have closure. Okay. And so that's all we want. We believe, Mike Rinder has countless videos, or very numerous videos, where he says, this is what OSA did. And he, in his book, he says he ran it for 2.5 decades here and there, give or take. We want to know who did this to us. Okay. Miriam wants to know who did this to her. She's not out to get anybody. Mike says he talked to the FBI. I'm grateful for that. I don't care about the FBI. I want to know who did this to me. Like there was a policy that came out in 1986 that has the COOSA name on it with MR about the regulation of children. I'd come back from Oregon. All my friends were 14, 15 years old, living in the street. They were told if they didn't sign the billion-year contract, they had to leave. So all these kids were huddled around LA, some homeless, some struggled in apartments because they didn't want to sign the billion-year contract. Who did that? That occurred, I think, in early 86 or 1985. This policy on how the children are to be handled in terms of labor and school, that has Mike Rinder's name on it in 1986. Everything okay, Rabbit? Can I keep going?
Yes, keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not here. This idea that there's a team of exposing Scientology and not exposing Scientology is not my concern. Okay. I'm not on team exposing Scientology or not exposing Scientology. I'm more concerned with just relieving human suffering for all people. Scientology causes a lot of human suffering. I'm grateful to anybody that does that. But this idea that there's two teams of people, those that want to expose it and those that don't, I completely reject that notion. Also, what team could be more important than stopping and getting justice for child sexual assault, the most vulnerable part of our population? There is no more important movement than that. What could be a greater abuse than the harm of a child? All of us are on this team first. And if this gets in the way of exposing Scientology, then so be it. Mike Brown would never say this. He was attacked in this thing. Mike Brown is a war hero. Mike Brown was shot down in Afghanistan. You would never hear him say that. Okay. And he went down with his ship, and every single person on that ship survived. And because he saw to it. Okay. So that's how I see Mike Brown. I find him to be one of the most unimpeachable people I've ever met. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what the point is in attacking Mike Brown, who currently is active duty U.S. military that trains our nation's Chinook pilots. He is a trainer. He's training people that keep us alive and keep us a nation state, which we all enjoy. Okay. Again, exposing Scientology as the most important thing is a false construct. Okay. We need to expose the criminals that actually did these acts. I don't know who they are. And then if we expose these criminals, then we expose Scientology. If we don't expose the criminals, we can't expose Scientology. I believe that Mike and Leah are heroes for their work. But I also think that if you helped run this organization and there was criminal activities going through there, the statute of limitations will probably run out on all of them. We need the specifics. And if you don't want to give us the specifics, just please understand that it's painful. That you know, like Jordan Belfort was in this incredible movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. I like to watch his podcast. Okay. Yeah. I feel like in certain ways the guy has redeemed himself. I don't want to see Jordan Belfort as the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah,
And I don't want to see ex-int executives on the on any sort of board to help abuse victims. I think it's a conflict of interest. That's my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. I believe that the only way to expose Scientology is to expose the criminals first. I believe that there's people sitting on the board at the Aftermath. There was 3 of those people. One was the Watchdog Committee Celebrity Center for 15 years plus. One was RTC right next to Dave. And then Mike. I believe I really am begging for them to understand the relief that we would experience if they would just tell us who did this.
Yeah.
Mike said that Miriam's case could bring down Scientology. Okay, there was nothing in the email exchanges that I've seen between Mike and Miriam where I saw that as a reality. To what I know is that growing up in this beast, in this machine, is that the COS normalizes a human atrocity, and I don't get any sort of necessity. Like when the Aftermath aired, they fair gamed Sina, who did her episode, and another sexual assault victim that did her episode with Miriam. They didn't fair game Miriam. And the reason they didn't fair game Miriam is because they knew it was true. Okay. Even and Matt Pesh talks about there being a slush fund where he covered up sexual assault. There's a video out there. Okay.
Yes.
And he and Amy seem like really nice people. Okay. So what I'm saying is, who made this slush fund? Who wrote the policy on it? Miriam asked that. That's a reasonable question. Again, I really appreciate all the people out there exposing Scientology. Leah, Mike, Aaron, Claire, all the different channels, Mark Headley with the spy files, all the different channels, but it's not my work. Okay. My work is I lived through something with 4 near-death experiences that I shouldn't have lived through. When something like that happens to you and you live under that kind of crush for your childhood, you almost ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I alive?
Yeah.
And the answer that I came up with, the existential choice I made, was to have empathy to bring relief to others. And that's what my goal is. And I'm going to focus primarily on that. And I'm very appreciative of the people that are out there exposing Scientology, but my work is to, I'm trying to focus on that audience when I can, but also the broader audience through my work. Because listen, there's a lot of bad things that happen to people out there. Like I have to sit there and interview a Rwandan genocide survivor for 2.5 hours. I feel lucky about what happened to me when I do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I interviewed a woman who grew up in the worst slum in all of Uganda called Katwe, where she became, her sister died of disease, her father died of AIDS. She didn't go to school growing up, and then she became a chess champion. When I was listening to her story, I felt lucky about what happened to me. So Scientology does not have a monopoly on human suffering. It needs to be exposed because it's the only public group that is engaged in that kind of behavior and has not been shut down. And I'm so grateful to the people that do it, but I need to do my work and they need to do their work, and I need to do that work where I can. And I hope that doesn't offend anyone, but that's my focus. If I had not grown up in this stuff, then when I was at Fort Bragg and I saw operator syndrome, I would have never saw it if I did not grow up in this thing. But my focus is on bringing this into the mainstream world for all people. Okay, let me just run through anything else. I cannot understand what Miriam has endured as a 3-year-old child and continues to endure now. I don't see a lot of empathy coming from the people in the first generation. I don't really understand. Like, if you can't, Mike had this thing with Laura. She got really mad at him. He didn't react. All he did was have empathy for her. And that's what I would like to see. We should be careful not to turn this into infighting. We understand the manipulation tactics involved in dividing us is very dangerous. There really shouldn't be sides. There should only be one mission: the protection of children. The danger takes away from the focus on what's important. And what is important is the protection of child abuse and child sexual assault victims first. I might suggest to Mike that he be a little more careful of his own warnings to divide. His blog appears to draw lines in the sand when in reality we should all be on the same side of protecting the vulnerable youth in our community first. This is my belief system. Maybe I'm wrong. That's way ahead of Scientology for me. But if Scientology is doing it, then it puts Scientology higher on the list. Might be a little more thoughtful to speak to the smears while equating down the rabbit hole to Miscavige and reducing her to clickbait. Turning Aaron's drive, the Che Guevara of the anti-Scientology movement, it was what I call him, into the pursuit of some sort of wealth or aggrandizement is not useful. Mike Brown, who I consider a friend, reduced to lying and gossip. Myself offering PTSI relief equated to pursuit of profit. Even if I made a dime off the treatment, which I do make nothing off of MIRRIAM, it doesn't change the fact that this relief works. Quoting words like facts and truths to reduce the validity of the above while walking back from keyboard warriors seems like a lot of division, dismissive, and a lot of reduction of others. And I say that while thanking Mike to death for doing that show for me. It's complicated, but these things happen in stages, and we're in the stage now where we need to know what happened to us. I have found MIRRIAM to be nothing smart, kind, and honest, and driven to find justice for herself, which has taken 12 years and was started by Leah and Mike on the Aftermath show when she gave her case to the LAPD. I think it is possible that in her pursuit of information that you might have ruffled some feathers. And I think that when you're not protected as a child and crimes against you are covered up and you are continue to live in a reality where your perpetrators walk among you without consequence, it might be possible for you to become a bit weary. And it explains MIRRIAM. I think when working with a survivor of child abuse, you might grant that person a little bit of extra grace, kindness, and compassion. Is it possible MIRRIAM might have seen patterns in that response that concerned her and made her curious as to the very person she was asking for help and could have been involved in a cover-up of her own victimization or the cover-up of others' victimization? I think MIRRIAM asked tough questions. I can't imagine they are comfortable to receive. I think as an unprotected child trying to understand what happened to her, she has a right to ask them. I think we need to be careful to support survivors of sexual abuse and not to continue to re-traumatize them by trivializing them and saying that they don't have their own agency. If you think Jaime Mustard can tell MIRRIAM Francis what to do, I have to deal with this woman is formidable. Okay. So that's just another way of what's always been done to sexual assault victims is, that's just a silly girl that's being controlled by somebody else. This is decades old cliche. This needs to stop. MIRRIAM Francis represents who MIRRIAM Francis is. Okay. But also releasing relevant information to her assault online for all to see does not feel like somebody that's obsessed with the protection of a person. There are people who were once, and especially those born into the movement, who never had a choice. We need to relieve the post-traumatic stress injury, and then we need the help of the aftermath in order to get it. We're not right now. The aftermath that people are not getting this relief because of the division, politics, and infighting. What they're experiencing, in my opinion, from the data that I've seen, is a physical injury. If we were talking about broken bones, no one would question the absurdity of politics getting in the way of a medical intervention. Okay, the reality is that we're individuals within the church who are aware of the crimes committed against MIRRIAM. Who and what and why? Is it that far of a stretch to question the individual who ran the department that engaged in these activities for almost, for 25 years and admitted that it was his job to cover up the offenses? I would have asked. I guess if it was your daughter, you would have asked too.
Yes.
As MIRRIAM always says, and I'll end on this quote from MIRRIAM, beliefs don't commit crimes, people do. We need to know who did this. Who did this to me? Who did this to her? And in the words of Martin Luther King, we will not remember the voice of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Okay, I'm done. Okay, sorry. It's a lot. I'm sorry. And if
oh my God. Okay. Let me just say that let me just read something for you, okay? Laura FM says, Jamie, you are awesome. Love to talk to you. I think my brother would really benefit from your experience and knowledge. He really needs help. He was born and raised in the Sea Org Gold Base. This is from Laura FM.
Laura,
Okay.
let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Six Pack Abs says, Jamie, this is Lori. You helped me just yesterday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Setting up an intake call. You know, and the theme of the comments has been like, you've helped me. Thank you. I follow you. Your book, you have several books, but the one that we really want to focus also on too is a kid's book about resiliency or resilience. This is where you guys can find it. It's on Audibles as well. The icon is The Invisible Machine. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go. Well, the two books that I'm most concerned with are, a lot of people ask me, how did you go from being semi-literate from 19 and then, you know, end up getting an education and becoming an author and doing all the things you now? I explain how I did that, my frame of mind, in a kid's book about resilience. And it's also an adult's book about resilience. Okay. I think anybody could benefit from it.
Yes.
And then that came out in November. And then the most important book is The Invisible Machine, The Startling Truth About Trauma and the Scientific Breakthrough That Can Transform Your Life. And again, I want to read from the former Hector, like insurance companies are starting to cover this. This is from one of the top forensic psychiatrists in the world and the former director of behavioral health For All of Humana. The Invisible Machine combines Lipov's astonishing innovation with Mustard's keen analysis and masterful integration. The book is a compelling game changer. These are scientists, okay? These are neuroscientists. I'm an artist that saw some connections and was lucky enough for these scientists to allow me to amplify their work. I'm a servant of these scientists, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, but The Invisible Machine is the book, and the kid's book. If you want, get that book. It reads like a novel, The Invisible Machine, and you'll never see you'll never see people acting the way that they act that have been traumatized the same way again.
I want to ask you a question about why in the blog, out of curiosity, and you left me on a cliffhanger on this one too. Why the rabbit on the blog?
Okay. And this is, again, it's really hard because I'm so grateful to Mike and Leah, and that's real. Okay. If Marty Rathburn had just been the person on the Tampa Bay Times, I don't know that it would have got me to declare publicly and would have started my healing for post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
If Mike Rinder, so Mike was the person that I believed. If Mike Rinder had not done the Aftermath show, his ability to break down these policies and to get them to understand in a simple way, him and Leah, was astonishing to me. And it made the world less weird for me. That being said, I think what we expected was eventually that Mike would come out and say the Who. I think he would be a hero. And if the Who is him, I think he'd still be a hero. I don't know that it's him. I know that, but do I believe he knows who it is? Yes, I do. I think Matt probably knows some Who's, and he's a really good person from what I see on his interviews, and Amy too. They seem like really kind people. Okay, but the rabbit out of the hat, listen, I believe that is a technique used to imply that you don't have your own mind and that MIRRIAM does not have her own mind, and that this is somehow a scheme of the COS and the Office of Special Affairs, which is the dirty tricks and intelligence arm of the Church of Scientology. Okay. And Rinder ran that for 25 years. And he has a video out there on YouTube called How Scientology Covers Up Crimes. He has another one called How Scientology Covers Up Crimes Part 2. He has videos where he explains what OSA does, but he never says, when he does those videos, he always says they and them. He doesn't say I. And I believe that what MIRRIAM is going through, and maybe MIRRIAM is more evolved than me, because I've been trying to, if anything, we need Mike. Okay. Like he's right now being an expert witness in Leah Remini's lawsuit. He has inside knowledge. It's vital, right? This guy has a wife and a family, and he's done a lot of good. I just think that we expected the specifics to come, and they never did. And that's what's kind of happening here. And but I believe that that statement was particularly meant to get people to believe that I or that you are somehow an arm, or you are being operated by OSA, and it's dismissive of you. And so that way, it's a thought-stopping mechanism that's very common in the Church of Scientology. That way, people won't look at you for what you say or what MIRRIAM says. They'll go, oh, she's right out of Miscavige's hat. She's an OSA op. So then they turn off any critical analysis of what you have to say. I think that was put in there as a device, and I find it offensive.
Wow.
I think that what's being told is that people are being told that, this is all an OSA op, right? So if it's an OSA op, then what we're saying is invalid. And for the life of me, I've never seen, like, if the one thing that we can not judge a person and allow them to get upset and allow them to be emotional is somebody that was sexually assaulted as a child by their own father, starting at 3 years old, for years on 2 continents. Mike Rinder says on the Aftermath that he removed her mother, right? If you look at the tenor of the email exchange between MIRRIAM and Mike from the beginning, it's jovial. The cops are being really Soviet. And he's saying things like, okie dokie, great to hear from you. Like, none of that feels like she's talking to someone that says that this could bring down Scientology. And listen, here's the deal. And here's the deal on that. And this is is that Mike has said that, okay, to her several times. This could bring down Scientology. Now, people get sexually assaulted in religions all the time. And if a Christian sexually assaults someone, no one says this is going to bring down Christianity. It could only bring down Scientology if they covered it up and there was a record of it, and there were people that covered it up. Okay. So the fact that, it's hard to believe, and again, it's hard to believe that he wouldn't have knowledge of that, at least knowledge of it. And it's not knowledge of hers, knowledge of other ones. And again, this law enforcement officer told me the reason the who is so important is because we can't ever really close the door unless we understand it. Like the Church of Scientology keeps us for telling our own stories.
Yes.
Because if you tell your story like I'm doing now, you get declared a suppressive person and you get disconnected from your family from life. Well, part of our story is who did this to us. So I plead with you, if there's executives out there that know who did this to us, what were the policies that created me not going to school? What were the policies that created the way that I was treated as a child, with no empathy and no sympathy? Sympathy is below survival on the Scientology tone scale. So I didn't get it. Okay. It's considered pathetic to give somebody sympathy. Okay. If there's people that know about how this happened to us and who did this to us, please share it, because we need it to own our own story so that we can, to master our story, so we can hopefully at someday master our lives. And there's lots of literature out there that says, that you need to own your story to own your life. And if we don't know who did this to us and how it happened and how exactly it was done to us, I think it stops us in our quest to possess ourselves and own who we are.
I think, Jaime, you deserve all of the accolades, all the letters behind your name, as well as all the books and some. And it just amazes me as an outsider to see that there's a saying that says hurt people, right? So I don't want to excuse Rinder or anybody for that matter, right? That maybe this is the place that he is acting upon. Because when I read the blog and then he mentions people that as an outsider, I didn't even know there was other people like Mike Brown, who's in the chat, like you, for example. It just took me back, and I said, well, why? I don't believe Jaime Mustard had said anything or that I'm aware of from what I've watched. If I was a New York Times reporter and I decided to do an expose based on Miriam's story, I think it would. I don't know if it would have been received a little bit different. But because I'm a YouTuber and I just have questions and I wanted a platform, a victim and other victims, would that have been a little bit different? I'm just wondering if this is what this is all about.
Well,
Is it because it's me
I did
or
say
what?
something on Andrew Gold where I said, I don't want to hear Mike Rinder moralize, because I don't.
There,
If you just watch his video, How Scientology Comes Up Crimes 1 and 2, what OSA does, there's several, probably 5 to 8 videos over the years on that.
but Jamie, you're right.
If you lived under this thing, listen, his name is on that policy from 86 that talks about
Yes.
how education is relevant. I grew up under this.
Yes.
Okay. And the thing is, like, there's an organization in Oregon, and there's more around the world, or there's more of these, but the one in Oregon is called Road Pack. And they go and they teach inner city kids Shakespeare. And the whole premise of this program is to get kids to master their stories by teaching them storytelling through Shakespeare, because they tell these kids, if you can't understand your story of what happened to you, you'll never understand and master your life. And I was in denial of this. And even writing The Invisible Machine, there's a lot of my story in there that I was going to die with. Okay. And the only reason, it's really when we were working on the kids' book about resilience, I was telling kids that the way to be resilient is on the other side of hard. You have to do the hard things. I get into the specifics of that in the book.
Yeah.
And I was writing this book, which came out in November, over the summer, finalizing it with the art and the design and the editing. And I was thinking, gosh, I'm a hypocrite. I have this treatment that can help people, but I don't want to expose myself and the shame and humiliation of what happened to me. So I'm not willing to do this hard thing. And I don't think if I was writing and working on the kids' book about resilience, that I would have had the guts to tell the story. But I did go on Andrew Gold to say that about Mike. And I just don't understand why anybody thinks that. And again, one of the points that people make to me is, everybody was cool with Int executives being on that board until the thing happened with Aaron. Yeah. And I was cool with it too. And I was wrong. I'm capable of being wrong. Okay. And there may be, I was wrong about that.
But there's a difference.
Okay.
There's a difference, Jamie. Let me explain. I feel like you guys are a group of people, that are trying to seek answers. Everybody wants some answers to this, because you have to be able to consolidate some of this trauma and talk about it and figure out what it is that you want to do with your life. When I read Mike's book, to me, it just seemed like a very cookie cutter version. I hate to say it that way, but there's a lot of questions that people have, and there's this unwillingness, and it still sits with me, even though he says it on his blog, that he feels like people feel that there's this unwillingness for him to either be a cooperative. I mean, people are allowed to be critics of that, especially if you sat right next to the guy or were up there and made decisions based on people's life. People get prosecuted for sitting there and not doing shit about it.
No, if you know of a crime and then you don't report it, a felony,
exactly,
then you're considered a party to it. And also, I think you might be wearing some eyeliner, Rabbit, which means, and that's not FDA approved.
It's not FDA approved.
Okay.
And I'm not getting paid for my eyeliner.
Okay. Listen, here's what I see that's bothering me. And listen, I would like to open up the chat and ask some questions of the chat, because I'm trying to find out answers for myself in real time in terms of understanding this. And it's been MIRRIAM, beating the shit out of me. That's kind of woken me up to a lot of things. I mean, if you looked at, I'm here to stand for her. I cannot not do that. I lived through this. Okay.
Yes.
At least one of the kids from the suicides from the Melrose building was molested in that building. Okay. There's so many personal reasons that I don't want to get into of why I don't feel like I can't stand with her. That is my interest in this. Okay. But here's my question for the audience, because this is what I'm trying to figure out for myself.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I see as somebody that's been outside of this up until Aaron's show. So I've been out of this, right, on the fringes, and I'm still focused on my work while being incredibly grateful of Liz Gale, Laura FM, Alicia and her show, and Gary and Janice, or Mark and Janice, and all the people that are saying what this is. I'm grateful for all of them. But I've been really on the outside of this thing, and I've been criticized for it too.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But I just had too much shame. It's like coming out of the closet. It's a personal thing that a person has to do on their own. You can't tell somebody to do this. Okay. But what I see, I'd like to open it up to the chat and get an answer from you and the chat with this statement. What I see is somebody that's relatively new, and as an outsider, I'm not in this. I'm standing with Miriam. Okay.
Yes.
And if she asks me to do something, I'm willing to. I'm trying to I'm trying to make this woman feel protected because of.
Okay.
Okay. So here's my question. I see a clear division between two sides. It's not the people that are exposing it and not exposing it. The clear division that I see are the people that were the OG people that were recruited into this thing or chose it, and the kids who are now adults who were pissed off. And what I'm seeing is a bunch of pissed off kids who were told that were never allowed to be kids, and the older generation who chose it. And I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of empathy from them. I'm hearing words like trauma drama.
Yeah.
And I just don't think, and I'm pleading with you, OGs, it's not the same when you grow up and you're 2 years old and you don't get to see your parents, or an infant. Up until 300 years ago, every primate on this planet before the first industrial revolution, spent the first 2 years of their life 85 or 90% of the time touched with their parent. Humans did that the same way that apes did that up until the first industrial revolution. This thing that we are experiencing about never allowed to be children is a special form of hell. Please have empathy for us. Please understand that it's something different. So I have two questions for the chat, and then I will shut up.
We have 5 minutes. Okay.
One is, did we experience something different from them that we deserve empathy for? I would like to know. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
If you guys can add the answer, and then I can read it up. Go ahead.
Okay. Then the main question after that is, who is responsible for what was done to us? I don't know. Maybe it isn't who I think it is. Is it my parents? I think my parents have a huge part in this decision. They were there to protect me, and they fed me to the wolves, and they abandoned me at birth. Okay. Is it the people that ran all these things and operations inside the Church of Scientology? Is it, who is responsible for this? I don't know who needs to be held accountable for this. I'm too close to it. So I would love to hear from the people. Is it the people that did to us this in the church? Is it our parents? Is it the people that sat by and did nothing? Is it the people that have knowledge of these things that won't say anything? Who is responsible? Please help me to understand who is responsible for what happened to us. I really mean that. Okay.
So we got some answers here. People are saying David Miscavige. Okay. People are saying all of them.
Because this happened to be under L. Ron Hubbard too, or Lafayette.
Right. We all deserve empathy. Rinder developed the programs. Answer as to whose fault is it? I think all you mentioned, give me 1 second, it's going pretty fast, are responsible.
Yeah. Who's accountable?
Plenty of blame to go around from Hubbard on down. So L. Ron Hubbard is dead, y'all. He's not coming back in this lifetime. The man is dead. David Miscavige is as powerful as people make him up to be, right? So who's responsible at this point? I think it's a very valid question. Anybody in the chat? All of them? Parents?
I just feel like we're at the stage where we need to know the who.
Accountability is now all of them? Anyone who did harm should be prosecuted. Should it be the people that wrote the rules?
Yeah.
Should it be the people that sat there while the rules were being delivered? Who is responsible for all of this? And it's still going on. There's still children in there, guys. Who's responsible? Parents? The parents first, and the cults, and then executives? All of the above. When the stuff with the Catholic Church happened, they prosecuted a lot of people, including the offender and those that covered up, and those that sat there and knew about it and tried to cover it up, and even the attorneys. So I just don't, that's how I see all of them, but that's just my thought. I just don't know. Yes, they did. Look at this. The parents rescue the infants. I'm trying to get through the comments. You all deserve answers.
I don't want this to be about a single person covering things up. I want the collective, the positive idea of the collective, to that maybe we're never in this, and the ones that were in this, to resonate, to resound and reverberate. Who is responsible for this? Because I really feel I spent most of my life being told that I was responsible for this. I did this to me. I was indoctrinated. Anyone that I grew up with, or anyone that's part of this quote second gen community or born in community, understands what I'm saying right now in a very personal way. We were on the business end of this thing, okay? And we were told our entire lives, the ones that were born in or went to it there as little kids, in the inner clergy, the inner sanctum of the private Navy, that we did this to ourselves. It's very difficult to shake that off. It took me 8 years to even begin to shake this off after getting out in 2009, mostly with the help of Mike and the Tampa Bay Times article. It took me probably 8 years to even begin to shake it off. So the more in the comments people can say and help me see who should be responsible and accountable, and tell me that I'm not wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, that I need to know the who for closure, or that MIRRIAM is wrong for knowing the who for closure. Tell me that we're wrong. Yeah. I really feel that because of my indoctrination, I struggle with this.
This is a community issue as well, right, Jamie? That, the government, I mean, it could be just about anybody. Why do cults or even religious sects or whatever, people, groups that exist that have the doctrine that say that children don't have, a voice, or there is no child development? That right there should be the biggest red flag in any community. And even now, I just don't, I think everybody's responsible to a certain degree. And it is a very complicated situation.
The only people talking about it, like removing these religious protections on child abuse, is Child USA. I mean, they're talking about this. And, I wish more people would talk about it, because it's, but again, I think it's really important for us kids that this happened to also have perspective, that there's no, the COS does not have a monopoly on human suffering.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Laura?
Yeah. But yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura, for that. Thank you, Laura.
She says, yeah, my parents, everybody.
Okay.
This has been a really good conversation, Jamie. I appreciate you. I do. I really do. Do you have any closing thoughts for us or anything?
My closing thought is I'm here to stand for MIRRIAM, and I'm here to bring people can, research this thing. If it's, it's any new, this is my closing thought. Any new medical innovation is always met with controversy. Max Planck, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in the 1940s, said that medical innovation is won in funerals. You have to wait for your opponents to die. And my last thing that I would say on the medical innovation is there was a guy in the 1860s named Semmelweis who believed that at that time, he was in Germany and Austria, and at that time, doctors believed that infection was traveled through smells. And at that time, women were 5 times more likely to die in childbirth if they gave birth at a hospital than at home. And they didn't know why. So this guy Semmelweis, he thought it wasn't smells. He had this idea of microbes. Okay, and that it was germs, and that what was happening is these surgeons would be working on a cadaver or an operation, then they would run across to the other room without washing their hands and deliver a baby, and that was spreading infection. So this guy Semmelweis goes on this tour of Austria and Germany to try to convince doctors to start washing their hands, which we take for granted now. For his trouble, Semmelweis was put into a mental asylum where he was beaten to death 6 weeks later. Okay, so if people try 20 years after that, 20 plus years after that, Louis Pasteur would prove his theory. Okay. And so for the people that would besmirch my name, I'm just saying, hey, yeah, is it possible I'm wrong? Sure. Look, read the peer-reviewed papers. I'll send them to you. They'll be in Rabbit's chat. Okay. Go on, right? Or better yet, talk to 10 people that have had this treatment. There was a doctor in Germany that thought it was all bullshit. And then he did one. He was a military doctor at a military base there, a guy named Tarabi. After he did one, he ended up doing thousands. And he was a skeptic, and you could tell him, like, what would you tell people that this is not true? He'd say, yes, I've done this on thousands of people, and I talked to the wife, and I talked to the husband, and they talk about the way they are with their kids. So I don't care what anybody says. So please, rather than besmirch my name, don't look at the surface and go and actually look at what this is. It's mainstream. It's good enough for Medal of Honor winners and the Department of Defense and the Navy SEALs. And it's good enough for you.
I don't think they have room to talk. That's kind of where I'm at, period. Thank you so much, Jaime. Listen, guys, you guys get Jaime's book. Some of the people in the chat have said that they've already ordered it on Amazon, Audibles. Check it out. I'm going to put all of these resources that we just talked about earlier in the community tab so you guys can do your own research, make up your own mind, because at the end of the day, that's what's important, right? Jaime, don't leave. I'm going to excuse everybody. Stay put, please. Thank you so much. You guys drop some hearts for Jaime. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I hope you're doing something exciting tonight. You know what I'm saying? It is Valentine's. Just saying. Yeah. All right, hold on, okay? Guys, thank you so, so much. You guys are awesome and amazing. Jaime's contact information is in the description box. You guys go check him out. Hey, shoot him a message. Tell, whatever you want to talk to him about. He's always willing to answer, very responsive to his messages. Check him out. I will see you guys on the next one. Make sure you shared this live. Rabbits out, guys. Bye, guys.